You can come closer, we're no longer contagious.
Come along, come along. We can take you all on.
Yes.
Put them all. All right. Come closer, come closer. We're not infectious.
Not anymore.
Much. Allow me to introduce ourselves. This is my daughter Lily, and my name is Frank Malley.
Please excuse my green hair, I've been dead a while. We were both victims of the great Spanish influenza epidemic of 1918, which has now mostly been forgotten. However, it was the deadliest, most devastating plague in the history of the world, killing over 600,000 Americans alone.
Around 1/3 of the world population was infected by the disease, killing between 50 and 100 million people. Around 10 times as many Americans died of the influenza as were killed during World War I.
It was mostly deadly to young, healthy people in their prime of life, such as I was.
It was the fall of 1918. The war to end all wars was winding down, and peace seemed just on the horizon. No one at first seemed to understand the nature of the disease or what its symptoms actually were.
However, the Colgate Company placed ads detailing in the 12 steps to prevent influenza, such as be sure to chew your food carefully and avoid tight shoes and clothing, none of which were really very helpful. Now, the flu had hit in the spring, but it wasn't until the second wave of the epidemic in the fall that was the most deadly. That's which killed my father and me.
The disease struck with astonishing speed, often killing within hours of the first onset of the infection.
People would be on their way to work in the Loop, on board L's and streetcars. They'd be hit with the flu, and they would die before they'd even make it back home. Now, in the beginning, many people thought this was a biological weapon of the Germans, or the result of trench warfare, and especially the use of mustard gas.
Many of the early victims were young soldiers fighting the war. Their resistance had been weakened by malnutrition and the stress of combat. Although the Great War was not the cause of the flu, the close quarters and massive troop movements hastened the spread of the pandemic.
Everyone was in a panic. They would try anything. Many people resorted to old folk remedies, which do work on occasion. Mothers would insist that their children stuff salt up their nostrils and wear goose grease poultices and bags of garlic around their necks. You didn't smell too good.
Life as we knew it came to a halt. Many stores were closed and the customers had to place their orders outside. Those shops that were allowed to remain open couldn't hold sales that might attract a crowd. Schools and theaters were closed as well. Church services were suspended. Funerals were limited to 15 minutes. And the public health department distributed gauze masks like these to wear in public.
Those who ignored the quarantine rulings or were caught sneaking downtown to their jobs were made to pay very steep fines.
As the dead piled up, there was soon a shortage of coffins, morticians and grave diggers. Steam shovels were used to dig mass graves, and the bodies in some places were often buried without coffins. Here, however, in Forest Home, they somehow managed to keep pace with death.
Often little children would skip to this spooky little rhyme. I had a little bird, its name was Enza. I opened the window and influenza.
Every one of our family of 5 grown children was stricken with the disease. On our house, at 418 North Lombard Avenue in Oak Park, there was a large quarantine sign, as there was on many of the homes in the village. Lily was the first to pass. Christmas time, 1918.
Father died just after I did.
But we don't want you to become needlessly worried about the current H1N1 or swine flu scare. An announcement by the World Health Organization of a pandemic does not mean the end of the world. The last flu epidemic was in 1968, so the current outbreak seems to be a part of a 40-year cycle.
But just be careful what to watch out for. The symptoms are very similar to that of a regular flu, such as sore throat, headache, cough, body aches, and fatigue.
I felt like that most of the time anyway. Of course, today you have your vaccines and your antiviral drugs, but you also live in a more globally connected world. And those vaccines and drugs, just as the Spanish influenza turned out not to be the work of mad German scientists, the swine flu is probably not the result of some sort of conspiracy or cover-up.
Just keep yourselves occupied with other activities you enjoy so you're not focused entirely on the flu outbreak. Or you could think of all the other deadly diseases that you have to worry about, such as syphilis,
West Nile,
Ebola,
avian flu. Remember to exercise. Cancel that gym membership if you want, but exercise at home or take long walks. And remember to eat healthy foods. Even though it's called the swine flu, it's probably safe to eat pork.
or you could not. As with all chapters in history, there are lessons to learn for your own times, or not learn, as the case may be.
Thank you for coming by today.
Yes,
Thank you.
hopefully we won't see you again soon, but you never know.